Let me tell you about a neighborhood in Canada where a family won the lottery. Specifically, let me tell you what happened to that family's neighbors. Researchers at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia tracked lottery winners across Canadian postal codes. When a household won a prize of $1,000, the neighboring households showed a 2.4% increase in bankruptcy filings over the following 3 years. Not the winners, the neighbors. And when researchers looked at what the bankrupt neighbors had been doing, they found something specific. The neighbors' visible assets, cars, motorcycles, recreational vehicles, had grown. Their savings accounts had been drained. Something about watching a neighbor win triggered a sequence of spending in the people around them, spending on things that could be seen, funded by money that had been quietly set aside. The end result 3 years later was bankruptcy. Hold that. Someone else's good luck made the people around them more likely to go broke. That is not an accident. That is a system. And once you understand how that system works, you will see it everywhere. In your group chat, in your dinner plans, in the bachelorette trip everyone said was no big deal, in the car you bought because the lease on it felt completely reasonable at the time. The system has been running for as long as humans have lived near each other. It has a name, and knowing the name doesn't shut the system off, but it changes what the system can do to you. All right, to understand what happened in that Canadian neighborhood, you have to go back about 200,000 years. Human beings survived not as individuals, but as groups. A person alone in the Paleolithic was functionally dead. No group meant no food sharing, no shelter cooperation, no protection. Ostracism, being expelled from the group, was for most of human history a death sentence. That reality left a permanent mark on the brain. The brain evolved to track social standing with the same urgency it tracks hunger or pain. Where do I rank in this group? Am I contributing enough? Am I falling behind? Is someone rising faster than me? These are not vanity questions. For 200,000 years, these questions were survival questions. And in an economy, the visible language of social standing is spending. The house, the car, the clothes, the party you can afford to throw. Long before any of us made a single conscious decision about status, our brains were already watching, comparing, calibrating. The pressure you feel when a friend gets a new car or takes a trip you cannot afford, that is not weakness. That is the same machinery that kept your ancestors alive in conditions that would have killed them without it. The problem is that the machinery was built for a world where everyone around you was a fellow hunter-gatherer in a group of about 150 people. It was not built for Instagram. It was not built for the Newport, Rhode Island social season of the 1890s. And it was absolutely not built for the modern combination of infinite social comparison, visible consumer spending, and consumer credit. The mechanism is ancient. The amplifiers are new. Yeah. The proof that this is biological and not a modern invention is that every civilization in recorded history tried to shut it off with laws, and every one of them failed. In ancient Rome, the Senate passed sumptuary laws, laws limiting how much citizens could spend on food, clothing, and public displays of wealth. They passed them repeatedly. Historians count at least 5 major sumptuary laws passed in the span of 1 century. Each one failed within years. The Roman elite kept spending on private banquets and elaborate funerals because the social pressure to do so outweighed the legal pressure to stop. In medieval Europe, governments across England, France, and Italy passed laws specifying exactly what fabrics, colors, and styles each social class was allowed to wear. Silk was forbidden to commoners. Ermine fur was reserved for nobles. Laws in Italian city-states sent enforcement officers into public squares with authority to physically confiscate illegal garments. None of it stopped the behavior. Merchants wore the forbidden silks and paid the fines as a cost of doing business because wearing them was worth more to their social standing than the fine cost them in money. Then there is the Gilded Age. In the 1890s, the wealthiest families in the United States discovered Newport, Rhode Island, as the place to be seen in summer. Alva Vanderbilt built Marble House there in 1892 for $11 million, the equivalent of roughly $394 million today. She threw a single party to open it, a party specifically designed to force Newport's existing social hierarchy to acknowledge her family's arrival. The entire expenditure was a social weapon. Thorstein Veblen watched all of this. He was an economist from rural Minnesota, academic and unpolished and deeply strange, and he sat on the outside of the Gilded Age and looked at it clearly enough to name what he saw. In 1899, he published The Theory of the Leisure Class, and in that book, he coined the term conspicuous consumption. The rich, Veblen argued, did not spend on things because things were useful. They spent on things because spending was visible. What you consumed was a broadcast. Every dollar spent on something seen by others was a signal about your position in the hierarchy. It is the same mechanism the Roman Senate tried to legislate away, the same one medieval Florence tried to enforce in the piazza, just with better tailors and a lot more marble. And then Veblen died broke in a shack in the hills of California in 1929. 2 months before the stock market crash that would have vindicated everything he wrote. He had named the trap with precision. He had not escaped it. Okay, but here is where the story gets specific about why the advice has never worked. In 1913, a cartoonist named Arthur Pop Momand was living in Cedarhurst, Long Island, spending well beyond his means trying to keep up with neighbors who were significantly wealthier than he was. It ended in financial collapse. He could not sustain it. He and his wife moved to a cheap apartment in Manhattan, and from that apartment, he began drawing a comic strip. He called it Keeping Up with the Joneses. It ran for 28 years. The Joneses were never shown in the strip. They existed only as a pressure, an off-screen presence that drove the McGinnis family to spend, renovate, and perform wealth they did not have. Momand said the name came from his own Cedarhurst neighbors, whose real last name he changed for the strip to protect them. The phrase entered the language. The strip became so famous that the expression now stands in for an entire category of human behavior. And the reason it resonated so deeply is that everyone recognized the feeling immediately. Everyone knew the pressure. Nobody could explain exactly why it was so hard to resist. Here's the explanation. A team of researchers, economists at Berkeley, USC, and the University of Toronto published a study in the Journal of Finance in 2023, examining how people estimate what their neighbors and peers spend versus what they actually spend. The finding was stark. People systematically overestimate how much their peers spend and underestimate how much their peers save. And the reason is structural, not personal. Spending is visible. The car is in the driveway. The new deck is in the backyard. The vacation photos are on the phone. The dinner at the restaurant is a social event attended by 6 people. Every dollar your neighbor spends on something visible gets registered by your brain as data about their financial life. Saving is invisible. The retirement account balance is private. The emergency fund is private. The index fund is private. The decision to drive the same car for 10 years is not announced. The decision to skip the vacation is posted nowhere. Every dollar your neighbor saves produces no signal at all. So your brain is running a constant comparison. Am I keeping up? Am I falling behind? Am I getting ahead? And it is running that comparison on a data set that shows 100% of spending and 0% of saving. You are not keeping up with the Joneses. You are keeping up with a performance. You are calibrating against a curated presentation that systematically excludes the financially responsible behavior of every person around you. That is why the advice "don't keep up with the Joneses" has failed for 2,000 years. It is not asking you to resist a feeling. It is asking you to correct behavior based on information that you do not have and have no natural way to access. The asymmetry is structural. The advice treats it as a personal failing. Okay, here is what the mechanism costs in real money. Millennials report spending an average of $482 per month on social activities with friends. That is not discretionary luxury spending. That is everyday social participation. Dinners, group trips, concerts, birthday celebrations. Over a decade, that figure reaches $57,840. And that is the average. The institutionalized peaks are higher. The average bachelorette party in the United States now costs each guest approximately $1,300, including travel, accommodations, activities, and the share of costs for the guest of honor. 52% of bachelorette party guests report going into credit card debt for the trip. When asked why, 46% said "I felt obligated." 38% said everyone else was participating. Not "I wanted to," not "I could afford it." I felt obligated. Everyone was doing it. There is no villain in this story. Nobody stood at the front of the bachelorette bus and demanded that the guests go into debt. The pressure was distributed, anonymous, and emerged from the same social machinery that drove Roman senators to throw banquets they could not afford and medieval merchants to wear the forbidden silk. The mechanism runs without a conspirator. It only requires a group, a social norm, and a spending category visible enough for everyone to measure themselves against. The wedding is visible, the debt is not. All right. But here is what changes things. In 2024, economists Francesco De Acunto, Pulak Ghosh, and Alberto Rossi published a study in the Journal of Financial Economics. They worked with a large financial institution to run an experiment. They identified a group of households that were overspending relative to their income, people spending significantly more than demographically similar peers. Then they gave half of those households a simple intervention. Accurate information about what people like them, same income range, same family size, same region, actually spent each month. Not social media, not aspirational peers, real budget data from real comparable households. The result, households that received the accurate peer information cut their spending by an average of $237 per month within 12 months. No lecture, no financial counseling, no willpower challenge, no app that blocked purchases, just accurate information about what peers actually spent. $237 per month, invested at 7% annual return for 20 years. That is over $160,000. The problem was not weakness, it was wrong data. The solution was not trying harder, it was fixing the data. Pop Moman moved out of Cedarhurst, drew the strip from a Manhattan apartment, and lived to 101 years old. He outlived the newspaper that ran the strip. He outlived most of the Cedarhurst neighbors he had been spending to impress. He named the mechanism, removed himself from the environment that was running it at full strength and made it to 101. Yeah, the mechanism doesn't turn off. You will keep feeling the pull. You will sit at a dinner table and notice what everyone else ordered. You will see the car in the driveway. You will open the group chat about the trip. The evolutionary circuitry does not get patched, but there is a real difference between running on corrupted data without knowing it and running on corrupted data while knowing it's corrupted. When you understand that spending is visible and saving is not, that your brain has been doing arithmetic with half the numbers missing, the advice changes. It is no longer be stronger than the feeling. It is correct the data set. When your reference group looks like it is spending freely and saving nothing, they are probably not. The visible half of the picture is real. The invisible half is also real. The person in the driveway with the new car might also have a retirement account you never heard about and a credit card balance you never heard about and a savings rate that would surprise you in either direction. You cannot see any of it, neither can anyone else. The pressure you feel is real. The comparison you're making is not. The first person to name this in popular culture moved away from the neighborhood that was running the system on him, drew a comic strip about it, and lived 101 years, not in deprivation, in clarity. That is what seeing it clearly gets you. If this changed how you think about why spending feels the way it does, subscribe. There is a lot more history underneath the systems that run your financial life.